Hello all and welcome to the official FanTeam podcast brought to you by FanTeam, the biggest daily fantasy site in Europe. My name is Andrew and today I'm joined once again by injury analyst and fantasy football guru Ben Dinnery. How's it going, Ben?
It's going great, Andrew. It's going great. I mean, I speak to you more than I speak to the wife. And I mean, that's not necessarily a
Lucky
bad
you.
thing, by the way.
Lucky you.
Yeah. So here we are again.
You mentioned that you were top for a while of the Gameweek 24 weekly monster. What happened there? Run us through it.
It couldn't have got off to a better start, in all honesty. I lumped on Leicester and Liverpool in the opening fixture. I watched the game until I think it was about the 70th minute. Salah was in my team, was one of those picks, and left it at that. Looked at the final result, see the turnaround. I had included Vardy, Barnes, and Maddison.
Wow!
And took me to number one over the whole game. So it was the screenshot. It was the stop the clock. Let's call it stop the count. Whichever. And then I think just due to the nature of the way I select my players, I gambled against Burnley getting a clean sheet, although a lot of people lumped on that. And I also gambled against City and in particular Gundogan. Those were the ones that really hit me hard. Sometimes it comes off, and on other occasions it didn't. And as we know, Gundogan banged really well, and Burnley comprehensive defeat against Crystal Palace. That hit hard. And I went into the Monday night games with Sheffield United. I thought with that, I took a gamble that Antonio either wouldn't start or he would miss out altogether. That come to fruition, so I was happy. But the Sheffield United clean sheet didn't materialise. I had Chris Basham, who obviously gave away the penalty, and that put him, I think, on -3. And I picked, who was my other? I think I went Mason Mount as well, Chelsea midfield against Newcastle. And I also had Timo Werner. And Timo Werner was on my captaincy, but I had a vice captain on Aubameyang. So it looked great heading into the game. But, the minute that team was announced, I instantly lost 16 points there. And Timo Werner, frustrating to watch. I mean, he was awarded man of the match and he looked busy. But, you have a completely different perspective and a level of insight when you're actually picking these players and you rely on them for money. And Timo Werner was frustrating again.
You watch their every move, don't you? You watch their every run. You really do kind of analyse it a lot more. And he seems to be getting better. Do you think he's going to, bang soon? Do you think he's on the cusp of being, a big hit at Chelsea, or do you think he will continue to frustrate?
Look, and this is not just Werner or Havertz, or it's any player coming in from another league, particularly if those are younger players. There was always going to be a settling in period. You're talking about a new environment, a type of football with a different intensity, new teammates. You're going to have language barriers. You're going to have changes in routines, nutrition, philosophies.
Yeah, that's fair.
So there's always going to be that level of inconsistencies between performances, and that will come. I think we've seen with Christian Pulisic when he first arrived at Chelsea. Very indifferent, and then it was almost a year later where he started to string some consistent performance together, but then picked up a couple of injuries. For me, it's really going to be next season when you start to see the best of those players and you start to get those runs of not just 1, 2, and 3 decent performances, but 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, where they're really sort of hitting the levels that we know they can and why they were brought into the club.
Excellent. Okay, and let's maximise you being on here, Ben. Are you able to give us some injury updates? Because there's obviously some key fantasy assets across the board. Players like Gundogan, Ben Mee, Calvert-Lewin, Antonio. You mentioned as well. Are you able to give us some updates on those players?
Yeah, so there was a lot of talk with regards to Ben Mee playing in the midweek fixture. We now know that isn't the case, and it was never really the case. You talk about fake news and misrepresentation of things which I've said, and maybe this is a good point to raise within the fantasy community. some confusion may have been caused by Sean Dyche. We've seen the Ben Mee injury look quite bad. There was definitely a loss of consciousness, stretchered off, but that appeared to be more precautionary. Post-match, Sean Dyche come out and said, he's walking around the change rooms, he's absolutely fine. People then instantly assume that, he's okay, that's the green light, he's going to play midweek. However, with a loss of consciousness, you automatically need to go through that, concussion protocol, which means that, there is no return to play within 6 days. So it's what they call a graded return to play protocol. So they have to, it's almost a ticky box exercise. Day 1, you can do some light jogging. Day 2, if you come through that, you can maybe increase the intensity, so on and so forth. So with regards to Ben Mee, he is a player that we fully expect to be involved in game week 25. Mikel Antonio, again, he's one that we need to be very careful with. We know that David Moyes, it's his only his only senior striker at the club, and they need him to stay fit, not just for the next game or two, but for those remaining matches, until the end of the season. So the thing with and again, a lot of people were influenced by maybe the club sending out pictures of being Antonio out on the training pitches and so on and so forth. We already knew that. We already knew he had been training outdoor and he had progressed from the gym, to being outside. But it's one that we must we've got to be very cautious with. So return to training doesn't necessarily mean a return to play. If West Ham maybe had got beat or didn't play very well against Sheffield United, or Jess Lingard wasn't very good in that false 9 role, David Moyes would have different conversations and different pressures and considerations to make ahead of the game. Following on the back of that 3-0 result and those performances, David Moyes can, afford to maybe consider the fact that, we've got Antonio there, but why rush him back? Let's put him on the bench. If things aren't going well, we can throw him in there. But, that starting 11 probably deserves to stay in place. So, Antonio's in and around the squad. But whether he starts or not, I wouldn't be so sure. Definitely want to err on the side of caution. With Ilkay Gundogan, we produced a little video midweek suggesting that he wouldn't feature against Everton at Goodison Park. Even with a minor groin tweak or any muscle problem, given that, the quick turnaround, it was always unlikely. We talk about risk and reward. And again, City are still fighting on 4 fronts. They've got the final of the Carabao Cup and then the other 3 cup competitions in that. Throw in the Champions League, which kicks off for City next week as well. So Pep will be looking to manage his squad. He's more or less up to full strength. I think it's just Nathan Ake, who's the big major doubt now. Kevin De Bruyne's back on the training pitches. Fernandinho's training. So it looks pretty good. And again, it's just a case of Gundogan will be there or thereabouts. But for me, it could be a case of we'll keep him for the Champions League game. So maybe, Gundogan on the bench, or if he does start, it may just mean like a 50 or 60 minute run out. Like I say, we've got Kevin De Bruyne who comes back into the mix midweek. Now, if he gets minutes against Everton, it wouldn't surprise me if Pep again threw him in on Saturday from the start, just to get him a little bit of sharpness ahead of that Champions League. And the fourth one, I can't remember who you said.
Calvert-Lewin, sorry. Yeah.
Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah.
So this is a one we've heard this a couple of times in recent pre-match press conferences. Carlo Ancelotti coming out and said this player will definitely be available for them next match. He done that with Jordan Pickford. I think he missed 3 games. He said on Friday that Calvert-Lewin would definitely be available on Wednesday. It's since transpired he isn't. We know it's a slight tweak. There's nothing serious there, but hamstring injuries, they have very high recurrence re-injury rates. That's why you have to be so careful. Suffered one at the beginning in January as well. So the Merseyside derby is a big game. So, I suggest that maybe, that City match, he was just taken out of the firing line to make sure that he is ready to face Liverpool. And I would give him a strong possibility of being included in that starting 11.
Fantastic, wonderful update here, but you've helped me, and a really exciting development Man City. You mentioned the whole squad almost as fit is Sergio Aguero. I think it's going to be really interesting to see over the next few weeks how he kind of integrates back into that team, whether he makes a starting 11, if he can make, City are obviously playing incredibly well as is, but he adds a different sort of dimension to that attack as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of question his quality over previous seasons. Sergio Aguero will feel that he's still got a lot to prove. Yeah. He's maybe unfairly garnered some critics this season through his lack of goals. But, from injuries to COVID to self-isolating, he hasn't had that run. So I think for himself personally, if this does end up being his last season at the club, you want to go out with a bit of a bang, and you not want to tarnish, that record that he's had, amazing record that he's had at the club since he's been at City.
Great, thank you, Ben. Okay, so for our YouTube watchers, please remember to click the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, to press the like button if you enjoy our content. So our feature tournament for this podcast and video is the Gameweek 25 Weekly Monster, which is a prize pool of a massive €75,000, and we'll be running through the Gameweek's applicable fixtures and sharing our entries with you. So watchers and listeners, what is very similar to the free hit chip in Fantasy Premier League, where you basically pick the best 11 players for the specific game week that you think will score the most points. So the brief rules: build a squad of 11 players, including at least one goalkeeper, 3 defenders, 2 midfielders and a forward. You can select up to a maximum of 3 players from any one Premier League team. You have a 105 million budget to build your 11-man team. You can make unlimited changes to your team until the first applicable match kicks off. You pick a captain and a vice captain. Your captain will score double points. Your vice replaces your captain if he doesn't play, and the safety net applies. If your player does not start, he'll be replaced automatically by a cheaper player from the same club and position, and player prices do not change. So for those watching on YouTube, we now have the point scoring matrix on screen. As you can see, it's very similar to the season-long fan team game and indeed the Fantasy Premier League game. Ben, it was great to see the Champions League back last night, and what a start, obviously, with, Mbappe scoring an incredible hat-trick. Barcelona potentially on a decline. Liverpool playing really well as well. What were your kind of initial observations of the football last night?
Well, I had a vested interest. I've got a couple of teams entered on fan team there. I was fortunate enough, lucky enough, to captain Mbappe in one of those, and I also had Lionel Messi in the same team.
Nice.
So I think from 2 players, I'm at 41 points for that. And other team, I've got Mbappe in another team with Salah and Trent. So I've had a pretty solid start. I mean, it's gonna, it's very early days, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more twists and turns. There's going to be a lot of shocks. But the Liverpool, performance did not surprise me. I don't necessarily think that their results have been as bad as what the table and maybe what everybody would like to have us believe. Underlying stats are still decent. They've been a little bit unfortunate, maybe just not as clinical. Thiago's a little bit of a conundrum in that team. Maybe hasn't settled as quickly as you would have liked. But on that European stage, I think that maybe suits him more to the cut and thrust of the Premier League, and they look a lot more at home. For me, in the Premier League, I think Liverpool need Jordan Henderson in that midfield role. He does a good job in that back line, but obviously, in the absence of everybody, then he's been required to do a job. But I think Premier League, I think it's he's pivotal for that Liverpool side, and I would like to see him back in his more familiar midfield role in the Merseyside derby, although I'm not sure whether that's going to be possible or not.
Yeah, definitely. I picked Mbappe in a couple of my entries, but I think I captained Ronaldo in one, and I captain Lewandowski potentially in the other one. So a decent-ish start. But if you've captained Mbappe, you kind of got off to a better start, really. There, Ben.
Yeah,
Fantastic
I mean, I have picked a Ronaldo. I didn't. I think did I read somewhere that he hasn't actually scored against Liga opposition in European football. So that was, I know Ronaldo's one for breaking records and proving people wrong. That's what put me off slightly with that. I think I may have went Haaland in another team. So I covered most bases. I was quite surprised to learn that the Mbappe pick was only 12% of those entries, which when you looked at, some of them other big names, the Lewandowskis, the Haalands, the Messis, the Ronaldos, he was way down on the list. So maybe that was reflected in the first fixture being at the Camp Nou, and people think it might be a little bit of a tight affair. So I'm happy with that. Good start.
Excellent start, mate. So there are 3 full round weekly Monster tournaments every game week. This week, one has a prize pool of €12,500 with a guaranteed first prize of €1,500, which you can enter for as little as €2. For this week, there is also a free entry for this competition to new FanTeam users. So if you do fancy seeing what all the fuss is about, head to fanteam.com, register and play that tournament for free. There is a high roller tournament if you want to play for big money, but our feature tournament for this podcast is the €75,000 prize pool game with a guaranteed €7,500 first prize for just a €20 entry. The teams we pick can be used across all Monster tournaments. Just a reminder to enter all FanTeam contests. You must be over 18 and be gambleaware.org. So for this game week, we have 8 Premier League matches applicable for this contest, starting with Burnley against West Brom. Probably not the most exciting fixture to start with there, Ben. We then have Liverpool versus Everton, the Merseyside derby at 5:30 on Saturday afternoon, followed by Fulham and Sheffield United. On Sunday, it's West Ham against Spurs, London derby, followed by Aston Villa against Leicester, which should be potentially quite an open game there. Should be a good game. Arsenal, Man City, followed by Manchester United versus Newcastle. And then on Monday evening, it's Brighton versus Palace. It's probably worth pointing out that the matchups between Wolves and Leeds and Southampton versus Chelsea won't be applicable for this contest. So look at those fixtures, Ben. Which one of those gets you a tingling?
Oh, it gets me a tingling. Now it depends. Obviously, I'm from a fan perspective. I always like the blood and the guts and the thrust of a derby. Yeah. I think Liverpool and Everton and also the West Ham Tottenham would be a good one. I'm looking forward to the Jack Grealish, James Maddison, how it probably will be billed. I think both players will be looking to maybe put a marker in the sand and really go out and maybe show Gareth Southgate what they can do in head-to-head, and they'll both be pushing for that. So I'm looking forward to that. Our game against United, Old Trafford, is going to be a tough one. We're looking over our shoulders, so that's a game that I'll be following fairly closely. And obviously, I'm going to have to go against my lot for the purposes of FanTeam this week. But I think the 2 fixtures that we're remitting from this this slate for FanTeam, I think that helps in a way. It really does, because we always seem to say it's difficult. There's a difficult set of fixtures to look at, and I think just external influences around maybe double game weeks or maybe European football will impact on managers' selection decisions. Sure. And I think it opens the playing field for everybody. Yeah. I think, if you can box a little bit clever and try to, there will be some big winners out there, I'm sure, this weekend.
Definitely. The other kind of catches my eye in terms, I think it, kind of hard to predict. Arsenal, Man City. So Arsenal, obviously played really well, gave Leeds a bit of a thumping last week before they conceded a couple. Man City just, they're just on the train, right? They're just unbelievable every single match. Quite hard to call there. How do you see that match kind of playing out?
And then you add in the Mikel Arteta
close relationship. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I don't want to read too much into the Leeds result.
Yeah.
I'm obviously in no position to question anybody, never mind Marcelo Bielsa. But for me, the Calvin Phillips injury, from the outside looking in, you bring Shackleton in and it's a straight swap. And I know Bielsa talks about how his players can play in numerous positions, but you put Shackleton in at right back, then you move Ailen across to centre back, and then you move Crick. And you're making 4 to 5 changes for the sake of one player. And for me, I think it was the wrong decision. It's always easy to say in hindsight. It created a bit of a perfect storm. Aubameyang, who had been champing at the bit for a couple of game weeks, being on the bench, to come back in, gets the penalty, which eases and it allows Arsenal just to relax a little bit. Leeds chasing the game, pushing. There's always going to be spaces in that Leeds United backline, but it's one I'm not touching for FanTeam, because I just think the price point of the players, there's just too much uncertainty around that. We know Pep's already come out and he says he will be looking at that Mönchengladbach game and he will be making changes.
Yeah.
Whatever 11 he puts out can be strong enough to easily go there and take all 3 points. But it's trying to nail down who the starting 11 is going to be, who's going to get the 60-plus minutes. And, like I say, Arsenal will be brimming with confidence off the back of that 4-2 result. So I think it'll be a tight one. I think it's a 1-0 Manchester City.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I don't see. I can't see Arsenal score. I say that I'm not so much looking at players like Aubameyang and Lacazette, but I do think that players like Saka and Smith Rowe maybe just surprise them a little bit with their pace and energy, and they've got a trick up their sleeve, haven't they? Obviously, Man City absolutely fantastic at the back, but yeah, Arsenal. I've got to be fair. I'm a Spurs fan, right? So I've got no kind of vested interest in bigging up Arsenal, but they do. I think they're starting to build something quite exciting, and maybe this isn't the game, obviously, which kind of highlights that as such. But I'd be pretty excited as an Arsenal fan, I think, moving forward. You mentioned the Villa and Leicester game, the potential England midfield kind of hot shots for the Euros in Grealish and Maddison should be a fantastic game. Liverpool and Everton is quite hard to call, because I think that Liverpool playing well, they'll get a lot of confidence from last night. Everton obviously go to Man City off the back of a poor performance on the weekend at home to Fulham as well. But with it being a derby, as you say, kind of all goes out the window a little bit. How do you see that one playing out, kind of Liverpool and Everton?
Yeah. Look, you rip the phone book up, and it's the blood, and it is blood and guts, and there'll be no half measures in this game. Yeah, purely looking at the two teams, given of where they're at, it has to be Liverpool for me. It just has to be. But we know that Everton do possess a little bit of quality, and if they can, put that performance together, inherently they perform better away from Goodison Park, where they've suffered. Even Newcastle beat them at Goodison Park, so that's how bad they are. And of course the Fulham group, the game against Manchester City would be a good barometer of how they are in terms of their confidence and maybe that little bit of fragility within the squad. If they can bounce back, and they don't necessarily have to get the result, but just put in a good performance, that will stand them in good stead. If they're on the receiving end of a big Tonkin, that all it takes is for Liverpool to break through early doors, and again that confidence and the questions with regards to what do we do, shut up shop or what have you. I don't think Carlo Ancelotti knows 100% who his backline is in particular. We've seen Yerry Mina in and out, Michael Keane. We've got Seamus Coleman. He's got Godfrey that he's been playing in and out there as well. Holgate. So for me, you just need to stick with this, and settle back four and just continue with that. I think the only guarantee for me is Lucas Digne. Yeah, who I think is a great player. But if pushed, I think I'm going to say 2-1 Liverpool.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, so with that in mind then, Ben, I've got your team now on the screen. Do you want to run through your team? Some really interesting picks there.
It's always interesting.
It's always interesting.
So I went 4-3-3, and I always try. I like to double or maybe even treble up in that backline if I can at all. Price points were it's a little bit tight this week. I normally like the the 6 to the 7 million pound marks, and even if they don't get a clean sheet, I'm picking up a couple of points and I'm building elsewhere. So I've went with Fulham. So we are recording ahead of the game, their midweek game. Yep. So they're currently sitting on back-to-back clean sheets. Scott Parker seems to have them well drilled.
Yeah.
And with a goal scorer up top in Maya, if I've pronounced that right, that eases a lot of pressure on that back line. If you're constantly against the wall, you're worried about making a mistake and thinking it's going to cost you the match. If you've got Maya who's scoring those goals, then the team can step up. They can play on the front foot. And I think just in terms of that back line, I think Areola's looked really good and on his loan spell this season. I think he's made a massive difference. And I've also went in there with Anderson as well. I don't really think it makes a massive amount of difference who you opt for in that Fulham backline. You're purely going for defensive returns. And at his price point, if he didn't start for whatever reason, then I have got that safety net. So that was the reason behind that pick. Now we've went to Aston Villa, and I've tripled up with Villa throughout the team this week. And the price is really good. That's reflected in the fixture for what looks to be on paper to be a difficult game, and it is very difficult. I'm sort of banking on the fact that Leicester are, playing away in the Europa League on Thursday evening, so there may be a little bit of fatigue involved in that squad. There may be some slight rotation from Rodgers, but I still think he will go fairly strong. So again, I'm making it. It's a bit of a leap of faith. And so, in my target, I like it. I could go for any of those three, because I know Matty Cash is likely to miss out with a hamstring problem, but with Mings might have been the other one. But I just think Matty Target just offers a little bit more as a fullback. Maybe, supply line to Ollie Watkins and linking up play that little bit more. So that was the rationale behind that. I've got in. I wanted to keep a little bit of interest going into that final game as well on the Monday night with Brighton, and Brighton have improved of late. They've looked a lot better, and Lewis Dunk is somebody that offers that defensive, but hopefully from a set piece there is a chance that he may get on the end of something from a dead ball, corner, free kick. So he's in there as well, and I've rolled the dice on my fourth pick in that year, in that back line, and that's 10.8 million on Luke Shaw. Isn't something that ordinarily I would go anywhere near. I think this is probably the most expensive defender I've played this season. But I just look at Newcastle and the fact that we have Callum Wilson who's sidelined. We have problems throughout the team. We look devoid of confidence. Even the Chelsea result, you can maybe look at that and think 2-0. That's not a bad result, but the reality of the situation is we never really threatened. I mean, Chelsea weren't great, and on another day it could have still been 3, 4, 5. So if Newcastle are sitting in there, then that's going to allow the likes of maybe Wan-Bissaka or Luke Shaw, the freedom of either flank to be able to join in the attack. And Luke Shaw comes into the game on form, on merit. Again, they've had a full week to recover, so it's somebody that I certainly wouldn't expect to be rotated or rested with Telles. So that's why he got the nod over Wan-Bissaka. Slightly different maybe from the season-long format where I might have went on the opposite flank, just because you're guaranteed minutes with Wan-Bissaka. So a little bit higher up the pitch, again we talked about this head-to-head, the Grealish versus Maddison. And it's, again, just looking at the fact that, Leicester are playing away. We're not sure if Maddison starts or not. That might impact on a decision to be made down the line. But at the moment, I just think, Villa have played quite well since returning following their enforced shutdown through COVID. They had a lot of games in quick succession, but now they've been allowed to return to the training pitches and just go back to basics. Dean Smith will be working with his squad all week. They weren't great last time out. I think it was Brighton. Martinez, arguably kept them in that match, and they came away with a point. And I'm expecting Jack Grealish to really put on a bit of a show and help Villa take over. And I think they might surprise a few and come away with a 2-0 victory. So that's the reason.
Leicester play obviously in Europe as well, don't they, on the Thursday evening as well?
Yeah, so that's it is, yeah. And it comes down to Brendan Rodgers' team selection. Yeah. We know that Maddison hasn't been risked in domestic cup competition and then leagues, and he's been sort of taken out the firing line as Jamie Vardy was. Yeah. However, with it being this knockout phase, I'm not really sure how strong Brendan Rodgers will go. It's obviously it's a difficult game for them, so it's one they can't afford. If they come away with maybe a 1-0 defeat, that's realistic from going at the second leg for them to be able to put. So yeah, one to watch. Elsewhere in midfield, I've doubled up on Manchester United.
It must pain you, mate.
Look, it's a head over heart moment. Yeah, there is no room for sentiment when I'm doing this type of thing. And the reason I've went double United in midfield is because I like them from an attacking perspective. And as we'll see, me forward slots are all taken up. So it was always going to be Bruno, even though 14.9 million is heartbreaking. But the man is an absolute machine.
He's a fantasy machine. Do you know what? He's one of the very few players over the years that it doesn't matter how he plays, whether he's having an awful game, whether he's in the game or not, he always finds a way to return from a fantasy perspective, don't he? He's incredible.
Yeah. So for that reason alone, and I would expect, to have the freedom of the part against Newcastle, in all honesty. So it was an absolute no-brainer. Yep. And looking at who else that I could possibly bring in, the only viable option that I had there was Mason Greenwood. But there is still a little bit of sound sort of insight into why that is. He didn't start last weekend. Anthony Martial was poor. He came on, and again, he showed at what level he's playing at. Mason Greenwood. He was excellent when he came on. He signed a new contract extension midweek. It's somebody who Ollie is a big fan of. And so, I think he's going to be coming on with a lot of confidence. And I can see Newcastle getting a bit of a thousand at Old Trafford, if I'm honest. I think there's 3 to 4 goals in there for Manchester United if they want to push it without a shadow of a doubt, unfortunately for me. And now, the 3 up front, and this is, I hate to be one of those guys. It is a bit of a punt, but I've been on Diagna, I think that's right, from West Brom since the beginning. He had 4 or 5 games. He assisted in his first 2. I think he's 3rd. He hit the post twice and he had a goal disallowed. Yeah. Then he scored at Old Trafford. Could have had a hat-trick.
He could have.
Looks a threat. It's a game, West Brom now can't afford to really draw. I think they've got to go out there and try to get 3 points. Those new players who've come into the squad makes them look, I'm not saying they're not going to be pulling up trees, but they're a threat. It's 7 million. I definitely think it's worth a punt. Burnley, I don't like going against Burnley, it's particularly at Turf Moor, because we know it's a rigid 4-4-2 and there aren't going to be many chances. But I think it's 7 million. He's definitely worth a shout in. Who knows what can happen to Burnley midweek, as we've seen, last weekend when they picked up that injury in the back line. Yeah. We know that Eric Peters is also carrying a groin problem. Charlie Taylor should return to the squad, but you're then asking a fullback who's been hampered by a hamstring problem for a number of game weeks now to play back-to-back. So, you start to shuffle things up a little bit, and then you may start to see some gaps in that Burnley backline. So, again, it's a little bit of a punt. Ollie Watkins will take the central role, again, at the price point and the fact that I'm banking on Villa just taking advantage of a full rested week on the training pitches while Leicester are recovering from European football. And my final forward choice is Maya from Fulham. 2 goals last weekend. I don't want to read too much into it. It's a call, it's a gamble. And I've always championed Sheffield United's cause. I've always thought that even though against the odds, and I've looked at the table and thinking they can still actually do that. It's everything's been on small margins. But Monday's night's game at West Ham was almost a bridge too far. Was almost the tipping point for me to say, actually, you know what, maybe that's it. It's over. And subconsciously, the players are maybe believing that now as well. They lost John Fleck to a late illness, which caused his hospitalisation, who had been playing all right. And he also lost John Egan, now who was stretchered off and left the ground on crutches. So you're throwing Phil Jagielka back in there, who's been a great servant, and he will do a good job. But I think just with Fulham on the back of a couple of decent results, barring midweek because we don't know what's happening, I think Scott Parker's side's got every chance of going out there and doing all right against Sheffield United. I think they're Chris Wilder. You have to question, some of his, with the budget that he's had, and bringing in Ryan Brewster for the amount of money he did, and he's not getting a game. For me, it is over for them, and where Fulham are still of the belief that they can survive. Loftus-Cheek is looking a lot better. Ademola Lookman looking a decent player. Dikubova Reed, and you've got somebody there who's banging in the goals or gives you that threat. Again, that confidence just trickles through the team. So that's my start 11. That's hopefully going to bring home the bacon, Andrew.
It's a lovely looking team. I agree with you on most of those points. My team is quite similar-ish, even though the picks are a little bit different, but it kind of reflects what you say. So I've actually gone for a 5-4-1. So I think FanTeam are bang on in the way they are pricing these, in terms of they it makes it difficult to kind of squeeze in all the players you want. It is tough. So I've gone for a 5-4-1. I've gone for Darlow in goal. He's the cheapest player in the game. Expect some save points. Expect United, as you say, to score 2, 3, 4 goals. But I also expect Darlow, who's a very good keeper, to keep out another 4, 5, 6 as well. So I always stick in a cheapie, and it tends to work well. Mirrored your team in Luke Shaw for the same reasons. I think he's actually been unlucky not to get more tackle returns. He's had he's had a lot, but he gets in the box a lot. He gets onto the byline. I don't think it's long before we see a goal from Shaw as well. He's always kind of that 6-yard area to the left hand side. We saw it a bit over last season. The season before, he tends to get a goal or 2 in the season as well. So I think he's a really good shout. He is expensive, as you say. And Dunk as well. So that Monday interest. Palace are not the best at the at the back at the moment. They're not the best in the air either. So Dunk has got an outside chance of an attack in return. But I agree with you that Monday match is always nice to have a bit of representation. I've gone for Creswell against Spurs. So Creswell is one of the top fantasy defensive picks of the season. I know in FPL he's actually the top point scorer for defenders now in all of FPL is set pieces are absolutely fantastic. Spurs have been, I mean, they didn't really turn up against Man City, and they haven't been that great. So I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs didn't manage to score against West Ham. And again, there's that attack and turn outlet. And I agree with your score prediction of Arsenal and Man City. So I've gone for double Man City at the back because I think that I just can't see Arsenal breaking them down. Man City look absolutely rock solid. So I've gone for Cancelo and I've gone for the expensive Diaz in this one. If either of them don't play, it goes down to Stones and Zinchenko and Walker and whoever else, in terms of safety net. So I've gone for 5 at the back. I've gone for Maddison. So, I just think he looks in just fine form. He's playing more advanced this season, isn't he, as well? He's playing in that, more of a 10 role than he has in previous seasons. Villa can look suspect defensively. I know they do keep a lot of clean sheets, but I think a lot of that is down to Martinez. He's such a fantastic player. So, and he can't keep doing that forever. I think their XGC, Martinez wasn't in goals, they would have conceded, they would have drawn and lost a lot more matches. So I think Maddison can play on that. And in terms of West Brom, I've gone for Pereira. So I did pick Diagme up front, but I have gone for Pereira because I think back in the team on all set pieces, looks a fantastic player. I think he's on penalties as well, isn't he? So I think Pereira, is a good shout for this weekend. And potentially moving forward and thinking of bringing in him into my FanTeam's season-long team, because he's not one who's pulling up trees with underlying stats because he's been out for a while, he's been in and out. But I do think moving forward, Pereira is going to be a good shout. Gone for Son just because I can't resist Son. I don't know if it's my the kind of Spurs in me. I know he's playing West Ham and I've picked out Creswell, but I do think if Spurs are going to score, Son will very likely be involved, and he's just so explosive. At the start of the season, we saw him score 4 goals in a game. He's a bit feast or famine, but I just think he's such a wonderful player, and he can just turn it on at any time. So I've gone for Son. Captain Bruno, can't look past it this week. Just think that and I know that you normally like to go for a bit more of an outside pick as captain, but even you have captain the main protagonist this week. So he's my 4th. And I've gone for Meyer or Marja, or I'm not sure of his name, up front, in just the one up front. Jeff United agree with everything you said. I think he'll start. I think he's well. I've actually got my vice captaincy on him as well, because I do think he's actually got a shout of really scoring a goal or 2 this weekend. I've got my vice on him. I think he'll be reasonably low owned, especially as captaincy, and obviously in daily fantasy you're always looking for that kind of edge, aren't you? So quite similar-ish teams maybe, though the picks are slightly different, but excited again for the weekend. Excited to put in a couple of entries. Love this FanTeam weekly game. It really does add such a different dimension to the way that you play fantasy on the weekends, the way you watch the matches, and it really does add a lot of it makes you watch the games you wouldn't normally play, like Brighton and Palace on Monday night. I normally I wouldn't even bother, but now I'll be watching every time the ball, every time Brighton get a corner, cheering on Lewis Dunk to come in and steaming and
it brings out your inner Wenger, doesn't it?
Right.
Telling your lass on the couch about that run on the inside now.
Exactly. When Mark won the Gameweek 18 weekly months, I think he won. He said he was watching Palace on the Monday night. I can't think who they were playing, but he was relying on Joel Ward to kind of keep a clean sheet and bring on the bacon. Was it Arsenal they were playing? Might have been Arsenal. I can't remember. But he said he had to tell his wife to leave the room, or he had to leave the room because relying on Joel Ward to win you €5,000 or whatever it was. It brings out a different beast in you, doesn't it? For sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is it from us for this episode. All the links are below for all the games we have discussed today. Don't forget, for this week, there is also that free entry to the €7,500 tournament for new FanTeam users. So head to fanteam.com to register and play that tournament for free. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining me this week. We'll have you on again very, very soon. And the best of luck for your entries. Looks a really good team. Definitely be looking forward to Duncan, Shaw and Meyer. And, if Villa beat Leicester on the weekend comfortably, I'm thinking of you and your team. Hopefully you get the job done.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Absolute pleasure as always.
Okay. So remember that if you liked what you watched, please press the like button and remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you're listening on a podcast, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. So this podcast will be available on the FanTeam YouTube channel and available as an audio version on all major podcast platforms. Our website is fanteam.com and our Twitter handles are @FanTeamOfficial and @FanTeam_UK. Give us a follow for regular game updates and for entry giveaways for lots of other FanTeam competitions. Obviously, with the Champions League this week, it's been so busy on Twitter. Loads of giveaways, loads of fantastic offers for FanTeam. So make sure you follow. Some really good stuff on there. We'll be back very soon, looking ahead to the Game Week 26 Weekly Monster. The very best of luck for Game Week 25. Goodbye for now.